Many elderly parents find that family relationships grow more complex with age, particularly when the question of whether to live with their children after retirement arises. This dilemma, which may appear straightforward at first, is laden with emotional and practical complexities that impact both parents and children. While some view living with family as a way to maintain close bonds and secure care in old age, what initially seems like a comforting solution can gradually evolve into a situation of continual sacrifice, leading the elderly to question their autonomy and quality of life at a stage when peace and contentment should take precedence. Thus, there is a need for deep reflection on what it truly means to live well. With this in mind, I invite you to explore this reflection by examining the implications of a choice that many of us will face. A friend, Amita, after the passing of her husband, decided it was time to live with her youngest son, Tashi. Amita had dedicated most of her life to the family, with all the love and sacrifice that a mother can offer. When her husband fell ill, she stood by his side day and night, never complaining. However, after his death, a void filled her life, and she thought it would be better to be near Tashi and her grandchildren, believing that the presence of family would fill that emptiness. "It will be wonderful for everyone," she said with a gentle smile as she prepared her things, full of expectations. Amita saw the move as a new opportunity to reconnect, to be present in her grandchildren's lives, and to help Tashi and his wife Asma with their day-to-day lives. The desire to reintegrate into a united family once again was what excited her the most. At first, everything seemed to fit perfectly. Tashi's home was spacious, and his family was happy to welcome her. The grandchildren were thrilled to have their grandmother close by. But as time went on, things began to change. What used to be small favors quickly turned into daily responsibilities. Amita, who sought companionship and emotional support, suddenly found herself assuming the role of an unofficial caretaker. Afternoons once devoted to reading or walks were replaced by endless lists of tasks and family commitments. Each day she felt more burdened by her duties and less enjoyment in the living arrangement she had once valued. "Dear, can you pick up the kids from school today?" Carlos would always ask, and though exhausted, she always responded with a smile. Over time, an ironic sense of loneliness began to grow within her, finding solace she hadn't expected, but also an emotional weight she had never anticipated. Conversations with Carlos and Salka gradually became limited to practical matters. Amita felt that while her presence was necessary, it was becoming increasingly invisible. The sense of being valued as an important part of the home started to fade, and disappointment enveloped her like a persistent shadow. Amita began to question whether this was really the life she wanted in her old age. Her own desires and needs seemed to be sacrificed for family closeness. The idea of a happy ending surrounded by love seemed ever more distant, and she began to reflect on the need to seek something that was truly for her. The first signs of conflict appeared almost imperceptibly, like small cracks in a seemingly solid wall. At first, it seemed natural to Amita that Carlos and Salka would ask her for help with household chores and childcare. She always believed that her presence was meant to add to the family. However, over time, those requests, which were initially occasional, became constant. What had once been a simple favor quickly turned into an expectation. Gradually, Amita realized her responsibilities were increasing, and the time she should have spent on her own activities and rest was being drastically reduced. The situation worsened when she started to feel that her presence was seen more as an obligation than as that of a beloved and respected mother. Words of affection and gratitude, once frequent, were replaced by impersonal requests and disguised demands. "Mum, can you stop by the market today?" Salka would ask, almost as if it were Amita's duty. She became the central figure for the maintenance of the household, taking on tasks that Carlos and Salka either couldn't or didn't want to handle. What should have been a harmonious coexistence turned into a stressful routine where the role of mother was confused with that of an unpaid domestic worker. This new role began to weigh more heavily on her, as small daily frustrations accumulated, creating constant tension between her and the rest of the family. Amita knew that to be the mother and grandmother her family truly needed, she had to be at peace with herself. That meant, above all, regaining her independence and the ability to live on her own. The memories of her life before moving in with Carlos started to resurface strongly. She recalled how even after her husband's death, she had found happiness in her simple routine, surrounded by friends and activities that truly fulfilled her. The idea of returning to her hometown, where she had her roots and where she felt completely at peace, began to take shape in her mind. Finally, she realized that her happiness didn't depend on being close to her family, but on finding a balance between loving her children and taking care of herself to preserve her dignity, mental health, and well-being. Amita knew she had to make a brave decision. Although she understood that communicating her choice to Carlos and his family wouldn't be easy, she also knew it was the only way to regain control of her life. She no longer wanted to be just a silent presence in her son's home. She wanted to be the protagonist of her own destiny, even if it meant facing the unknown. With that thought in mind, Amita began planning her next steps, aware that true happiness would only be possible if she had the courage to choose what was best for herself. One day, Amita gathered all the courage she had to share her decision with the family. That morning, with the coffee still fresh on the table, she called Carlos and Salka for a conversation. Her heart was pounding, but the words came out with surprising calm. "I've been thinking a lot lately," she said, looking into Carlos's eyes. "It's time for me to follow my own path in search of a life where I can find the peace and independence I've lost." The silence that followed seemed to stretch on for an eternity. Carlos and Salka exchanged glances, surprised and concerned. "Mum, are you okay? The kids are going to miss you so much," Carlos said, trying to absorb what he had just heard. Amita took a deep breath, aware of the difficulty of the conversation, but also knowing she was making a crucial decision for her well-being. "I love my grandchildren, Carlos, and I'll always be here when you need me," she began. "But I need something more. I need to rediscover who I am and do the things that make me happy. If I don't do it now, I'm afraid I'll lose myself forever." Salka, who had been silent until then, nodded slowly, acknowledging the depth of Amita's words. "We'll miss you a lot, but we love you," she said. "May you find happiness, and if that means going back home, then that's what you must do." Those words of support brought immediate relief to Amita, who finally felt understood. The day she returned to her hometown was filled with mixed emotions. As she packed her things and prepared to leave, a blend of sadness and excitement washed over her. Leaving Carlos's house was painful, but the idea of returning to her own home, where she could live on her own terms, brought her a renewed sense of hope. When she arrived at her destination, the weight she had been carrying on her shoulders seemed to lift. Opening the door to her old house felt like entering a warm and welcoming space, different from what she had felt at her son's house. This was her space, her refuge, and the sense of freedom that flooded her was almost indescribable. In the following years, Amita began to rediscover the life she had left behind. She resumed her morning walks, reconnected with old friends, and even started exploring new hobbies she had always wanted to try, but never had the time or courage to pursue. That small step toward independence strengthened her conviction that she had made the right decision. She felt more alive, more connected to herself than she had in years. Amita knew this new phase would not be without its challenges, but now she was prepared to face them with the confidence of someone who had chosen her own path. The freedom that once seemed like a distant dream was now part of her reality, and she was determined to make the most of this personal rebirth. Family living is an art, especially when it comes to elderly parents and their adult children. Amita's experience clearly illustrates how excessive proximity can create emotional distances and tensions that didn't exist before. By deciding to return to her own home, she sought not only independence, but also recognized the importance of maintaining a healthy space between her and her family. Physical distance, far from being a sign of disunity, can be key to preserving and strengthening family bonds. When everyone lives separately, visits become moments of genuine connection, free from the daily tensions that often arise from constant cohabitation. Maintaining a balance between closeness and distance allows each family member to live their life fully and authentically. Adult children, no matter how much they love their parents, need space to establish their own routines, raise their children, and cultivate their own relationships. Similarly, elderly parents need an environment where they can continue to exercise their autonomy, pursuing their own activities and interests. When this balance is achieved, family interactions take on a new dimension of quality, creating a nostalgia that, when filled with planned visits and gatherings, reinforces love and mutual respect. This new dynamic allows for interactions to be marked by conscious connections rather than imposed obligations. Now, when Amita visits Carlos and his family, those visits are filled with moments of genuine joy and mutual respect. She knows she is there because she has chosen to be, and her family welcomes her with open arms, aware that her presence is a gift, not an expectation. This new form of relationship where balance is valued makes every moment together meaningful and special. By nurturing family ties in a healthy way, balance in relationships fosters harmonious coexistence, allowing everyone involved to grow and develop individually. Amita discovered that preserving her own life not only protected her mental and emotional health, but also revitalized her relationship with her son and grandchildren. Though it is often difficult to achieve, balance is essential for the well-being of all and for the continuity of healthy and happy family relationships. Constant sacrifice, when practiced excessively, can become a dangerous trap, especially for older parents who, in their desire to protect and support their children, end up neglecting their own needs and desires. Amita reached a point where she had given up everything that made her happy, believing that by sacrificing her own wishes, she was fulfilling her role as a mother. However, she realized that this path only led to a state of deep sacrifice and loss of identity. Amita felt resentment, not because she lacked love for her children, but because she felt she was giving up on herself. When parents dedicate themselves entirely to their children's needs, while ignoring their own desires, they risk losing touch with what makes them unique and happy in the world. While this continuous self-sacrifice may lead to a feeling of emptiness, as though life has lost some of its meaning, Amita began to notice this in her own life. Little by little, she stopped reading her favorite books, participating in social groups she enjoyed, and even taking care of herself as she used to, all in the name of sacrifice, which, though well-intentioned, began to drain her vitality and happiness. Over time, Amita started to feel a certain bitterness, not due to a lack of recognition, but because of the sense that she had lost something very precious, her essence. It's important to remember that self-care is not a selfish act, but a vital necessity to stay healthy and be able to help others. As a well-known saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. If parents want to remain a solid support for their children, they must ensure they meet their own emotional, physical, and mental needs. When Amita finally decided to prioritize her well-being, she not only regained her joy for life, but also became a more fulfilled mother and grandmother, capable of offering the best of herself without feeling overwhelmed. Amita's story is a powerful reminder that balancing caring for others with caring for oneself is essential for emotional health and well-being. Healthy family relationships involve a delicate balance. Sacrifice is part of the parenting journey, but it should not come at the expense of one's own happiness. When parents allow themselves to live their lives fully, Not only do they benefit, but they also teach their children the importance of living authentically and maintaining balance. In the end, being happy and fulfilled is not only a right, but also the foundation for creating a loving and balanced family environment. Amita's experience shows us the vital importance of independence in old age. As we grow older, society often expects us to sacrifice our needs and desires for the sake of family, especially for our children. However, experience shows that maintaining autonomy and preserving identity is essential for a full and satisfying life. Returning to her own life was more than just a change in direction for Amita. It was an act of reaffirming her dignity and a conscious choice to prioritize her happiness and well-being. Independence in old age does not mean distancing oneself or abandoning family relationships, but rather seeking a healthy balance where both parents and children can live fully without unnecessary pressures or sacrifices. Amita learned that by taking care of herself, she became a more present and joyful mother and grandmother, able to enjoy family time without the emotional burden of self-neglect. This balance is what strengthens family relationships based on mutual respect and the individuality of each person. For those in similar situations, it is crucial to remember that the pursuit of independence is not an act of selfishness, but one of self-love and respect for your own life's journey. Staying active, cultivating personal interests, and ensuring your own space are key elements to a balanced life in old age. I encourage you to reflect on your own needs and take control of your life by making decisions that promote your happiness and well-being. If necessary, have a conversation with your loved ones to find a balance that works for everyone. True happiness, as Amita discovered, comes from living for yourself while maintaining a healthy balance between family responsibilities and self-care. The value of independence in old age is a gift we give to ourselves. Aging with dignity means keeping alive the spark of what makes us unique and happy. By choosing independence, we choose to live fully, with the freedom to keep growing, learning, and above all, being who we truly are. The most valuable legacy we can leave our children is the example of a life well lived, full of purpose and self-love. Now that you've followed Amita's story and reflected on the challenges and rewards of seeking independence in old age, it's time to look within and ask yourself how well you've taken care of yourself amidst family responsibilities. Have you allowed yourself to live according to your own desires and needs? Amita's decision was a courageous step toward reclaiming her happiness and well-being. What could you change in your life to make your journey equally fulfilling and satisfying? I invite you to reflect on your own experience and consider the decisions you've made so far. Perhaps it's time to talk to your children, express your feelings, and redefine boundaries to foster a healthier and more balanced relationship. Remember, your happiness is not only important to you, but also serves as an example and inspiration for those around you. If this story has touched you in any way, share this message with friends and family who care about you. This message can help start a meaningful conversation about the value of independence and the pursuit of a balanced life in old age. As Viktor Frankl said, life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. Be courageous and remember that caring for yourself is the first step in caring for your loved ones. Before we go, I invite you to leave us a like and subscribe to the channel by turning on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming lessons. Share this reflection and help spread the message that true happiness begins with valuing our own path. Until next time, my dear friends.